Federal government extends first phase of the border closure exercise till end of January. Organized labor urges state assemblies to force governors to pay new minimum wage. In international news, the world's biggest initial public offering kick-started by Saudi Arabia. And in sport, Rivers Angels win Nigeria Women Premier League Super 4 title.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The federal government says it has approved the extension of the first phase of the border closure exercise, codenamed Swift Response, to the end of January. Nigerian Customs Service spokesman, who is also spokesperson for the Swift Response team, Deputy Controller of Customs Joseph Atta, says this does not signal an end of the operation. Atta says officers in the field will be notified before the end of January if the operation will go into a second phase. The Nigerian Customs Service, Immigration Service, Armed Forces, policemen, and other security and intelligence agencies began a joint border security exercise in August to secure Nigeria's land and maritime borders from external forces. Arguments continued over the weekend between organized labor and state governors on the consequential adjustments in the new minimum wage. Now, Labour Congress is appealing to state houses of assembly to be on the same page with workers by forcing governors to pay the new minimum wage. It is calling for impeachment of any governor who does not comply with the new minimum wage directive. The Nigeria Governors Forum is insisting that state governors cannot be forced to pay beyond their individual capacities. Labour maintains all state governors have the capacity to pay because some of the governors ride in private jets. Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele is expected to appear before the Senate Committee on Finance to explain details of the rationale behind the exchange rate the CBN used for three key projects under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, PIDF. PIDF was earmarked from dollar-denominated sovereign wealth fund to partly fund the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Second Niger Bridge, Abuja-Kano Expressway, East-West Road, and Mambila Hydro Project. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Solomon Adiola, has demanded the appearance of the CBN governor during an interactive session between the panel and Managing Director of NSIA, Uche Orji. The committee says it would like to see the contract documents for these projects and get explanation on why exchange rate for the dollar to naira was at 325 naira to a dollar instead of the official rate of 305 in a government-to-government transaction for these key infrastructure projects. Two key federal government officials have been arrested by the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission for allegedly siphoning 68 million naira from accounts meant to pay suppliers and cooks in the National Homegrown School Feeding Program. ICPC spokesperson Rashidat Okojoa says these two persons identified as Agoda Ibrahim and Khadijat Karibu allegedly connived with some banks to unlawfully deduct unspecified amounts to 10 different business accounts from the cook's account for sundry aggregated commodity supplies without the clear approval of the state governor and other relevant authorities. Other acts of corruption discovered in the Kogi program include the fact that after cooks had signed the issuance voucher for the release of foodstuffs, storekeepers would release lesser quantities, and also that some foodstuff supplier for money deducted from cooks' accounts were never delivered and the money not refunded or accounted for. To party matters, the People's Democratic Party has denied taking a decision on what geopolitical region of the country would produce its flag bearer for the 2023 presidential election. The party's National Publicity Secretary, Kola Ologbodiyan, says reports suggesting that it was planning to retain the zoning of its presidential slots in the northeast and southeast were merely speculative. Ologbodiyan says the party is fully focused on how to win its elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states. The Nigerian Army has vowed to investigate, apprehend and sanction its personnel who may be involved in professional misconduct like extrajudicial killings and torture of suspects. Acting Director, Army Public Relations Sagir Musa says the decision was sequel to a video reportedly showing some Army personnel allegedly engaged in torture and extrajudicial killing of a suspected Boko Haram terrorist, likely in the northeast. Musa says troops in various theaters of operations in Nigeria have been consistently warned to desist from right infractions of any form, no matter the amount of desperation, anger or provocation. Musa says an investigation is kicked off to apprehend the culprits with the aim of dealing with them in accordance with extant military justice system.
Coming up, African news. Flood disaster relief begins arriving in Somalia to help more than 500,000 affected citizens. And later, international news. Saudi Arabia begins world's biggest IPO valued at about $1.5 trillion.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. Now to African stories. Humanitarian aid has begun arriving for nearly 500,000 flood-affected Somalians. Many of them, including 150,000 children, have been desperately in need of clean water, food, temporary latrines and shelters. Abdulaziz Bilo has the details.
This is one of 3 boats operated by volunteers to assist victims of deadly floods in the central Somali town of Beledweyne. Hundreds of houses in 3 densely populated neighborhoods of Beledweyne have been submerged by flood waters. Trapped residents have sought safety on rooftops as they await help from local authorities and well-wishers. Deadly floods in the region have displaced more than 250,000 people. Aid agencies warn that the displaced persons, particularly children, mothers and the elderly, are now facing serious hunger, health and protection risks in an area already receiving little to no humanitarian assistance due to increased insecurity and conflict.
Flooding occurred once in half a century, but now we have witnessed it twice in less than 2 years. Addressing this crisis remains a top priority for us as an administration. We have highlighted this issue with all concerned parties. We want cooperation to address recurrent floods in Hiran region, as well as Ethiopia where it originates from.
Aid has now begun trickling in to assist thousands at these makeshift camps on the outskirts of the city. Estimates indicate that floods have destroyed more than 3/4 of the city and surrounding villages. More than 100,000 children are among those affected.
In order to support about 24,000 people, the 4,000 households, the most needy. We also have 1 helicopter and 2 small planes which are bringing high energy biscuits. So this is food that doesn't need preparation and immediately can support children, mothers and everybody else that will need immediate response.
A nationwide campaign is already underway across the country and on various social media platforms to seek funds to assist flood victims. Farming communities in riverine areas have been the worst affected, raising the prospects of food insecurity in the coming months.
Algerian local media have reported a clash between the riot police and striking judges in the northwestern port city of Oran on Sunday. A nationwide strike started last month following the state-controlled overhaul of the judiciary. The body expected to oversee elections in December. The judges are demanding independence of the judiciary after an unprecedented mass reshuffle by the Justice Ministry last month affected thousands of judges. Police were called to the court where the protesting judges had attempted to stop a swearing-in session for their pro-government colleagues. The National Lawyers Union has denounced the use of violence, calling the incident a serious attack on the sovereignty of the judiciary. Protesters in Algeria have continued to demand political reform in the country following the removal of longtime leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika in April. Yield of hybrid rice cultivated by Chinese agricultural experts has reached record high in Madagascar and is helping to improve the country's food security. Chinese agricultural experts planted 5 hectares of hybrid rice at a town in Madagascar, and recent sample statistics have shown the average rice yield reached nearly 11 tons per hectare, well above the average yield of some 3 tons in the region.
Not far from the Madagascan capital of Antananarivo, farmers are preparing the land for a new season of rice planting. But it's not the traditional varieties that they prefer anymore.
After I received training from China, I began planting hybrid rice with my family. Since then, life has improved. We have started to build a house. I found that the yield of hybrid rice is much higher than our traditional seeds.
When Chinese technical experts first introduced the hybrid rice seeds, they had to adapt their planting strategies to suit the local climatic conditions.
Unlike our country, which has spring, summer, autumn and winter, Madagascar is divided into the rainy season and the dry season. You can farm in the rainy season, but not in the dry season because there's no water.
With ditches and waterways, as well as collecting water during the rainy season, it means that farmers can still irrigate their crops when water is scarce. Hybrid rice was first introduced in Madagascar in 2010, and so far, 5 varieties have been approved by the government. But despite bountiful harvests, it's been challenging to get local communities on board.
The rice importers who have been in this business for many years spread a lot of rumors. It's a long process to establish trust. Our company spent several years before the farmers realized the benefits of hybrid rice.
This project is one of the many South-South cooperations by China and the UN Food and Agriculture Organization.
U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, has reported the new U.S.-constructed airbase in Agadez, Niger, is now in business and has carried out its first unmanned intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance flight last week. The U.S. Air Force has said the $110 million airfield is one of the harshest locations from which the military operates. The facility, dubbed Airbase 201, was finished earlier this year after several delays, partly caused by the challenges of working in a remote desert. Niger and its neighbors have been battling several militants in the region, including Islamic State. A U.S. defense official says the American military has set up the new base in Agadez to extend the reach of its surveillance and reconnaissance mission in the Lake Chad Basin area of Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria. The Agadez base is controlled by Nigerian forces, but the U.S. military has exclusive rights to about 20% of the compound's 15-kilometer area. The base hosts hundreds of U.S. airmen and an undisclosed number of U.S. aircraft. When we return, international news. Saudi Arabia begins world's biggest IPO valued at about $1.5 trillion. And later, sports. Rivers Angels defeat Confluence Queens to win NWBL Super 4 title. Welcome back. This is ANN News and World Events. In global business, Saudi Arabia's giant state oil company, Aramco, has finally begun its initial public offering, IPO, on Sunday. It has announced its intention to float on the domestic bourse in what could be the world's biggest listing as the kingdom seeks to diversify its economy away from oil. But in its long-awaited announcement, Aramco, the world's most profitable company, did not offer much information on the number of shares to be sold or the pricing and when it would be launched. Bankers say investors will likely value the company at around $1.5 trillion. That would be lower than the $2 trillion valuation projected by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman when he first floated the idea of an IPO nearly 4 years ago. Sources have told Reuters news agency the oil company could offer 1 to 2% of its shares on the local bourse. That could raise as much as $20 to $40 billion. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba holds the record of raising more than $25 billion in 2014. The IPO is designed to turbocharge Prince Mohammed's ambitious economic reform agenda by raising billions to build non-energy industries and diversify revenue streams. Despite U.S. President Donald Trump's disparagement of the ongoing impeachment inquiry against him by the Democratic House of Representatives, the effort continues to gain more strength. A lawyer for a whistleblower who expressed concerns about a phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and the leader of Ukraine set off the House impeachment probe says his client is prepared to answer written questions from Republicans. Attorney Mark Zaid tweeted on Sunday, the legal team has offered to allow the top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, to submit questions which the whistleblower would answer in writing under oath and penalty of perjury. Top Republican on the House Oversight Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, has objected to the proposed process, saying written answers would not provide a sufficient cross-examination process. Zaid responded on Twitter that whistleblower laws protect the identity and careers of people who report issues such as misconduct, abuse of authority, and dangers to public safety by government employees. Despite law protecting government whistleblowers, Trump has demanded again on Sunday that the whistleblower's identity be revealed. The Democratic-led impeachment probe is centered on whether Trump called on the foreign government, Ukraine, to interfere in next year's election and withheld military and unless Zelensky publicly committed himself to investigating Biden and his son. Greece's new asylum law is generating concerns and criticisms from Greek and international aid organizations. Critics and the United Nations say the new law could put an excessive burden on asylum seekers and could subject them to deportation and death. Reporter Filio Contrafuri has the story.
A former military camp on the outskirts of Athens, now home to almost 1,000 asylum seekers, mostly families. The majority are from Afghanistan. The camp is at full capacity with dozens of new containers added in recent months. It is in camps like this that asylum seekers are transferred from the Greek islands and wait for months for a decision on their application. Ghazal arrived with her husband and 3 children in 2018 and will have to wait until May of 2021.
I don't want to my child live in a one camp. Just I want to leave my child go to another country and I have one house. My child is go to a school and university and I find a good job. My husband I want to just a normal life.
The government says the asylum system has been strained by a backlog of 68,000 requests. Greece is slowly recovering from a devastating economic crisis and unemployment remains high. With asylum seekers spending months, even years in camps, integration for many remains a distant option.
The more we develop the possibility for them to access the labor market, to learn Greek, the more we create the conditions for them to really have a choice.
The Greek government says accelerating asylum procedures is the main aim of legislation that was approved on Thursday. It would also expedite the return of people whose asylum claims are rejected. The new bill also sets stricter criteria for asylum seekers, a move the government hopes will deter those not entitled to asylum trying to reach Greece.
Since August, according to the UN Refugee Agency, over 25,000 migrants and refugees reached the Greek islands. They account for over half of the total sea arrivals in Greece since the beginning of the year.
Europe's human rights watchdog warned that camps on the Greek islands are on the edge of catastrophe. Manos Logothetis spent years as a doctor at the refugee camp on the island of Samos and says the new law will create a fair and clear framework to decide who is entitled to stay in Greece as a refugee.
We have made it clear from the beginning that there is a limit to the number of migrants our country can take. After that, the solutions will be different. And that's when we'll really need the help of other European countries.
Several Greek and international humanitarian groups, including the UN Refugee Agency, have criticized the new law. They warn it could lift some protections for asylum seekers. Yet despite the controversy, Greece will remain a gateway to Europe for thousands who are determined to go on with their desperate journey.
Up next, sports. Rivers Angels win 2019 Super 4 title. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, Rivers Angels have won the 2019 Niger Women Premier League title against a very determined Confluence Queen side over the weekend. The victory gives the Edwin Okon side their 7th title, having won the league last in 2016. Winner of the 2019 Niger Women Premier League went home with 3 million naira and a one-week trip to Spain as part of the La Liga NWFL partnership deal. Niger's former superstar and Tanzania's former coach Emmanuel Amunike has announced he's open to new job offers. The 48-year-old who led the Taifa Stars to their first Africa Cup of Nations since 1980 paid the price for the team's failure to progress to the knockout stages at Egypt 2019 after finishing bottom of their group. The 1994 African Footballer of the Year says it is a fresh beginning for him because he has spent the last few weeks learning new ideas and methods. And we still wish him well. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.